Hello. Hey, everybody. We're going to do some introductions here in a few minutes. Wait, see if we get some additional people to join. Thank you for those who have already jumped on. We are going to have Q&As open during this, so feel free to drop any questions you might have that come up during the presentations. And we will prioritize and try to answer as many as we can. If we don't get to them all, we'll touch base offline. Also, I'll just note that this is our first time doing a webinar, so bear with us if we have any technical difficulties or issues that may come up. I want to thank everybody for coming. AI is something that everybody is talking about these days, obviously. So we wanted to provide some helpful tips, resources, and guidance on the topic, and hope you guys find this valuable. Our AI partners that Tech River is working with is Ride the Next Wave. We have a couple people from their team on the call today. They're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting. Jason, of course, is on the call. He has some input during today's presentation. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Corey. I'm the president of Tech River. I think everybody on here probably knows who I am, but if not, that is me. I'm going to introduce Shalish and Sandeep from Ride the Next Wave, and I'll let Shalish take over.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, AI Demystified. We are so excited to bring this in front of you all. My name is Shalish Bohr. I'm the founder and managing partner at Ride the Next Wave. We are the AI and consulting company. We're really excited about this, and I'm going to give it to Sandeep.
Hey guys, my name is Sandeep. I'm currently an AI engineer here at Ride the Next Wave. Excited to teach you guys.
And a quick hi from me, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I look forward to give you some great information. Hopefully you guys take some good takeaways today. I think with that, just to kick it off, before we dive into the session, just to give you a quick look at where we're heading as a series. So we've built this as a 4-part foundational track. Session 1 today, which we're doing today, right, is AI Demystified. So we're going to help build your mental model of how AI actually works and hopefully get you comfortable with Claude by the end of the hour. We'll show a lot of examples today in that Claude space, but a lot of the theories and principles will apply to any of the LLMs that you might be working with. Next week, we'll move into session 2 about your data and your advantage. And this is where we'll get into how we work with your actual data, the documents, reports, systems you have in today, and how we put AI to work on them. Session 3, I think probably the most critical one, AI governance and security, how to adopt it the right way. We're going to cover, as an organization, what you actually need to do to have in place, I should say, before employees are using AI in sensitive documents, how to think about data boundaries, and ultimately what good AI policy looks like in a regulated environment. So if you've ever wondered whether your team's AI that their use is creating exposure at all you don't know about, that's a session that'll kind of help, peel back the curtain a little bit. And then we'll wrap things up, session 4 with agents and automations, working at scale. So this is where we get into building intelligent automations that can run in the background and compound that time that you get back. So this whole track is designed for everybody, no technical background needed. Today is where the foundation starts. So with that, I'll kick it over to Sandeep to get us going.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Right, Solish, go ahead.
Jason, if you can go to the next slide. Welcome everyone. As Jason said, this is a 4-part series, and this is the first of it. And in today's webinar, we want to actually demystify AI in front of you all. You all know ChatGPT was released in December of 2022, and the rest is history, right? Over the period of last 3.5 years, we all have come long ways, and there's just so much going on with AI space, new models, new companies, new terminology. So we want to actually demystify it, all of it. So It's at the front part of it, we're going to give you some foundational understanding of what AI is. And then most of the time, we're actually going to spend on showing you real live examples of how to work with AI. And Sandeep will be going deep into it. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So, when we were planning this series of webinar, we want to actually talk about what does everyone do today, right? As far as AI goes, and it looks like everyone has some type of AI they are using today, whether it is Microsoft Copilot, Claude, Gemini, and a lot of people are using it. Some are avoiding it. Some are using it, but maybe they don't know how to use it. There are a lot of assumptions around it. Is it stealing my data? There's just so much going on in this space. And when we were talking about it, Jason made a really amazing comment, which is, we have to replace these assumptions we have with knowledge. And that's what we are here to do today, is to kind of share as much as we know about AI. So that's what we'll be going deeper into today. So let's go to the next slide. Let's just start. So what are you gonna, Sandeep, if we can go to the next one. So here is our goal today is to move everyone from this fear of unknown, what it is capable of, what it's not capable of, as I say, is stealing our data, to something you can take it and try it, right, in your own organization for your own productivity improvement. And our goal today, when you walk away, is really give you a mental model of how AI really works fundamentally, give you some amazing experiences, some tips and tricks on how to use Claude AI. We just chose Claude because that's what most of the organizations are trying to get to. And then this model, which we developed, which we call it VEP, verify, edit, and personalize. Like, use that model, a model you can try it in your daily life. So that's what you will have at the end of it. Sandeep, if we can go to the next slide. So as I said, over the period of next 50 minutes, we're going to show you why AI matters, how it actually works, right? The fundamentals behind it, what it's capable of, and then we're going to give you real live examples, which Sandeep is going to walk through. And at the end, we're going to do a quick knowledge check to see, what you all got out of it, and we would love to actually have you participate in it and share your perspective around it. So let's go. Let's just start with the first one. So Sandeep, if you can go to the next one. Here we go. So what you see here is really some of the terminologies you continue to hear when we all talk about AI. So just few definitions, and you will continue to find that everyone is kind of using these interchangeably. There is this whole space AI, which is such a vast space, but today we all talk about AI, but what is it? So it's a broad science of computer, right, focused on really building systems which are really intelligent and trying to become more and more intelligence to a place where it will be capable of what humans are able to do today. We are still few years away from it. It understands language, it understands patterns. You can even talk to it. If some of you who have tried, let's say, Gemini or ChatGPT on your phone and talk to it. So it has come a long ways. So it's a very, very interesting space. The second word you will continue to hear is this definition called machine learning. What is it? It's nothing but it's basically a subset of AI system, which is primarily kind of the brains behind AI, right? Which is it really learns from the data, which it is explicitly programmed to do it. So instead of following certain rules, which is what we typically do when we build tools today, it recognizes patterns. So that's what the space called machine learning, because it is learning, and the machine is actually learning it. So that's why the name came along, which is machine learning. And the last one is this thing called large learning model. That's a definition, which is nothing but a specific type of machine learning, which has been trained on lots and lots of documents, words, images. So this machine learning capability kind of learns from the patterns around it, generate text like how humans would do it when they are thinking or when you're summarizing a document. So just wanted to share that we talk about AI, but underpinning of it is really these two important capabilities is machine learning and a large learning model. And most of us today are using actually large learning models. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So really, what is, when you actually use Gemini or use Claude or any other tool, Copilot, what is it trying to do? And we always talk about all it's trying to do is predict the next word. That's all it is doing, right? That's why we call it, it's a predictive text on steroids. And you might have seen it on your phone or even in your current role when you're using Copilot or any other capability. All it's trying to do is as soon as you type something or give it some text to it, what we call it a prompt, it actually sends that information to a large learning model. So if you're using, let's say, ChatGPT, they have built their own model. Google, which has Gemini, they have built their own model. So that model is trained on hundreds and hundreds and billions of documents, emails, pictures, website, books, so it can predict based on that learning what's the next word it should which should be basically predicted. And that's primarily what it does. It predicts. It does not know what's going to happen. It's a prediction model which is purely based on statistics. It is so sophisticated that it has come long ways in last 15 years. So
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
wanted to
it's
share that perspective.
yeah, and I think to your point there, AI predicts, right? It doesn't know. So that means every response you get is a very confident estimate, but that doesn't mean it's a verified fact. So that should really shift how you use it, right? It's not a source of truth, but view it more as a powerful starting point, whatever you're working on.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, Jason. So let's go to the next one. So how does an LLM generate a response? Just like how Jason said, right? It predicts the next word. So how does it do it? And as I earlier said, it's been trained because there is some learning has to be there. You have to train this engine, this intelligent engine which is out there, and it's been trained, as I said, on lots of data publicly available. Then the other important part is the prompt. Like, how are you asking the question? Because it's going to give you the response as good as based on the prompt you provide. And you're going to learn some techniques throughout today's exercise, which is the best practices to get the best output when you are working with AI to solve your problem or want to basically improve your own productivity. But when
Yeah, I think,
yeah, go ahead.
and say to that prompt, I kind of view it. I've got daughters in high school, right, in middle school. If I ask them, "How was your day today?" I get a very short, abbreviated, pretty much non-response from them. If I specifically say, "How was your science class today? That project you were working on?" I might get a little bit more of a response from them. So I kind of view it the same way I deal with my kids. If I ask them a short question, that prompt isn't very specific, I'm not going to get a great response. But the more I kind of define what I'm looking for, I tend to get a better response out. So maybe a way you can kind of relate it to your everyday life.
Absolutely. And I think that if there is one takeaway, you can take today through the examples is how do you prompt this to learn those prompt techniques and prompt it in a way where it gets the best output you are looking for your question or your thinking, right? Because it is your thinking partner today. And as I said, it generates token by token. And the last thing is the output it is generating looks very intelligent. It is coherent, but it is nothing but a statistical prediction. And it continues to get better and better as the models get better and better. Okay, so ultimately, it's technology basically trying to create it for you, and it's as good as your thought, how are you actually prompting it, how are you shaping the response, and you'll see some examples of it. Okay, we have a couple more minutes. We want to spend more time on actually showing you the examples. So Sandeep, you can go to the next. There are two types of AI. There is a generative AI, which most of 90%, 95% of the people on the face of this planet who use AI, they actually use this. right? For summarizing documents, summarizing your email, generating, your SOP documents, variations of whatever, your work you are trying to work with. And then there is the predictive, which is really trying to use the data, historical data, um, identify patterns. And you have seen a lot of organizations, even especially a lot of organizations in the public space, they use a lot of this public data to find anomalies, make prediction. Financial organizations are really, really good at predictive AI because they have so much information over the period of last 25 years that they use it to predict basically even markets and where they're going to be other stocks and things like that, right? So there are two types, but most of us primarily today are working with generative AI, and that's where our focus is going to be today. So let's go to the next one and see if we could, a quick show of hands, right? How many of you have used AI tool in the last 30 days, including on your phone? Wow, looks like everyone, right? That's great. And then how do you feel about what you knew, what it was doing with your data? There you go. There are a few hands out there.
Little less confidence, a lot of
Less
usage, but
confident,
it's still a bit of
exactly.
lack of confidence.
That's good. I think what you will see as we go through this entire series, hopefully, there'll be more hands at the end of this series, right? We're going to talk about security and confidentiality at some point in this, okay, next series of webinars. So let's go to the next one. Let's just quickly go through it. So what AI can and can't do, let's just go to the next slides and if that's okay. AI is really good at summarizing documents. Hey, you want to create a version of email which has a tone into it. It answers your questions, really, really good at it. It finds patterns in your Excel documents, CSV. It can even create graphs for you. It is really good at it. Go to the next one.
And if you can say too on that, if you think about how many just long email threads, meeting summaries, or reports cross your desk in a week, right? Even if 2 of those get handled faster, the time's going to compound quickly across your whole team. You start looking at, right? It's just, you can't think of it as a magic wand that fixes everything. You got to start looking at it, tackling small things, and it's just going to build upon itself. And eventually that snowballs.
That's a good point, Jason. And as you can see, right, the task you have on the left-hand side, summarizing documents, drafting emails, answering questions, finding patterns, and the amount of time you're going to share, it has gotten really, really good at it over the period of the last 3.5 years. So here is where AI falls short. And we're going to talk about this throughout the next series of webinars we're going to bring, which is how do you deal with confidential data? Does it have access to your recent events which are happening unless you actually give knowledge of those events? So you will learn about how to provide knowledge. Remembering your past conversation, it does an okay job, but the models continue to get better. But one thing is for sure that it will never replace the human judgment and the relationships you all have, right, with each other. Or we all
I'm gonna
have
say
each other.
those bottom 2 rows, right? Those aren't limitations that are going to be fixed in AI, right? They're designed that way on purpose. AI informs, and the human always decides. And that's the line that stays in place regardless of how capable the tools get. You have to have the human in the loop. It's an important process.
That's a really good point you made, which is you'll continue to hear this word called human in the loop, where it's you are the one who is the human, or you are actually building this thing called agents, which we're going to talk about at some point in time. So let's go to the next one. You will continue to see in your own personal experiences, there is this thing called hallucination, which is ultimately it's a science, it's a tool which was built on science, right, and trained with data. So a lot of times it will not be factually correct unless you explicitly asked for it to make sure that it is factually correct. So there's things which really good at, right? It is a really good job of doing lots of things, but where it gets most often go wrong is precise math and calculations, right? Always verify your formulas. Recent events, if you are building using something, always make sure that you use you verify that names, jurisdiction. Just make sure that you protect yourself for hallucination, and it's just a matter of basically prompting it and making sure that you're telling it that, hey, make sure that you base this output based on facts and not hallucination. But you will see it. It happens to everyone probably on a daily basis. So wanted to just call that out. And then let's go to the next one. And this is the last slide, and then we'll get into the actual example.
And just on that last one, sorry, on that last one too, just, hallucination, it isn't a bug. It's more of a factor of how prediction works, right? So when you look at some of these things in the red, the citation numbers, regulatory details, specific names and dates, right? Those are the exact places where you need to slow down and as a human, come in and verify before things go out the door. So again, use it as an aid to get you kind of like to the 3-yard line, right? But as a human, you need to push it over the goal line at the end and just verify, especially on those really critical data points.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have heard about this one. Deloitte was in the news probably like 3 months back, where someone really used AI to build a report and did not actually verify it, and they ended up basically giving back the money to the client. So if you don't watch it, it could be a troubling sign. So Sandeep, if you can go to the next one. I think we wanted to make sure that it does not hallucinate, or to make sure that there is human always reviewing it. We created this model together in partnership with Tech River team. It's called VEP. So remember those three letters. First one, verify. If there is important information, check the date, the name, the number. If you're working with regulatory information, make sure the citations. So make sure that it is AI statistically likely to be wrong for those, because it was trained on previous data, not the latest data. So just keep that at the back of your mind. So always verify your output. Second one is edit, right? Change its generic voice, or generically it is trying to actually provide you information. Make it very specific. Your own personality, company's tone, maybe the knowledge you are providing by actually making it very specific. Make sure that it always does that. And the last one is really personalized, which is P. Add the context. Only a human with your relationship and history, right? This is exactly the white glove difference you will make to your clients, to make sure that it has that human touch to it. Okay, so every single time you work with AI, remember the VEP model. Okay, and we're going to continuously talk about it over the next 3 series.
I think from an organization level, right? When everyone applies the same 3-step review, the overall output quality stops depending on who ran the prompt, and you have more of a formal structure, right? So it's really going to ensure that you have consistency across your team. Everyone's going to have their own approach and way they look at things, but again, putting some framework in place on how we approach AI, how we approach the prompting, how you go through it, verifying your data, make your edits, personalize it right. You get consistency, almost like a branding of how you want to approach it, and it ensures that everybody's kind of using it the same way.
Absolutely, Jason. Thank you. And here we go. Let's get into some details. Let's get into some hands-on. So I'm going to transition this to Sandeep. Take it over from here.
Right. Hey guys, good morning. Before we go ahead, I just want to clarify a few things. This is going to show you hands-on Claude LLM end-to-end demo scenarios. The way we plan this out is we're going to go over 5 different skill sets that you need on a day-to-day basis to make sure that your prompting is accurate and you have the perfect token utilization and you're making sure that the answer is exactly what you're looking for. When you watch the demo, you can have either 2 things. You can either walk through Claude Live, or which we will do, and we'll show you a video of how we're teaching you how to prompt step by step. We're going to teach you how to refine. We're going to teach you Claude projects, and we're also going to teach you how to integrate memory within your Claude system. To begin with, the first thing we do on a day-to-day basis, or one of the most easiest toolkit of Claude, is to summarize, right? Summarization is one of the easiest ones that we have, and most people's first aha moment with like AI, right? Whenever we try and summarize most of these things, let's say you have a long email thread, you have a long report, right? A 30-page report, you have some meeting notes, you have some documents, you don't really have the time to skim through them or read. Claude will mostly summarize our work for you, read it for you, pull out what matters, and present that to you. Now, the way this works is that we're going to teach you certain prompt templates that most companies or industry practices use on a day-to-day basis to make sure they get the perfect use case, right? Initially, we showed you something called a token. I want to preface a little bit about that. A token is basically the utilization you give to an LLM that it spends, and you pay for that, and it utilizes it to predict the next word, which is what statistically we get. Now, with that out of the way, what does an email summary look like, right? So if you have Claude and you have a long email you don't want to read, you can say, summarize this in an email thread with 5 points. What were the decisions made? Why is this an open email? And what are the things I need in order to respond? For a report, you could say the same thing. You could say, I'm uploading a specific report, proposal, or an SOP. Please summarize my points, flag anything that looks incomplete, and list out any deliverables from both sides or anyone from my side. Here are some meeting notes, right? We usually have a lot of meetings and we have transcriptions we don't want to go through. Sometimes we have transcriptions that automatically summarize, but let's say you don't. Here are the meeting notes. You paste them, clean these up into a structured summary with decisions, SODs, and deliverables. I also want to preface on something called a Claude tip. A Claude tip is basically telling you here to upload and not paste. The reason we ask people to upload is because Claude has an inbuilt feature called MD file reads. Okay, so what it does is that it looks through your PDF, text file, Word, Excel, whatever, right? And if it's structured and it's a file, it can open that and read it faster, hence optimizing for your token utilization. Let's just go through a quick video on how that works. So as you can see, I'm going to have a video paste, right? So I have an email chain and I say summarize this video, summarize this email chain in 5 points, same prompt that we're using in the previous slide, right? So it gives you a quick summary of who needs to do what, right? What are the action items, what you still probably need to likely act on, right? The second one we saw was showing you a report. So you do the same thing, you click on the plus button or you drag and drop a report in the TXT file, you upload the report, summarize the points for me, flag anything that looks incomplete, and list out the action items, right? Does exactly that. Okay, so it shows you what's complete, what's incomplete, what are the action items for sales, finance, different departments if you have a lot of people on the call. And the third scenario is to say, okay, here are my raw meeting notes, clean these up into a structured file, give me the summary, the decisions, and the next steps. Right, really quickly, let's skim through this because it's a long file. There you go. So it gives you a structured memory summary of meeting summary of all the takeaways that needs to be done. Who are the people involved? What are the dates? What are the decisions made? What are the action items? Who has to fill it up, right? And eventually completes it. So following up with that, now that you have something like a skill that you've obtained for summarizing, I want to focus more on two things. One is a role and second is a context. What is a role and what is a context? So the main thing when you're prompting is to mention to Claude to pretend to be something so that it acts as it and it becomes better at its responses. So you start by summarizing something like, let's say you want to write an email, you want to write an SOP, you want to do an SOP, right? Whatever, a proposal or a client update. You give Claude two things when you prompt. One is a role and the second is a context. When you give a role to Claude, it acts or behaves like it. So you can say you are a senior engineer and your job is to draft the first document type for a specific audience. Oh, you want to draft a system architecture for the rest of the engineers. Here's the context. And you paste all the notes or bullet points that you have. And eventually you get the answer that you, same thing with SOP, right? So starting with you are changes the way Claude thinks. You can look as an quality engineer and you can go be a marketer at the same time. And you can try this by yourself after the session where you look through what are the two different types that Claude has in its responses. One where you don't type you are and another where you type you are, right? So that gives it. So two things you want to take away from this skill is that you want to get the role and you want to get the context. You can also try adding more and more context by mentioning the tone, the key points that you need to cover initially through Claude. Now let's just go through a video to explain that.
Yeah, well, that's running there. I mean, I think, just to reiterate on, defining how you want the AI to act. I mean, I wouldn't go ask my friend that's an accountant for plumbing advice. Probably wouldn't give me the right, information. But, if I had another friend that was a plumber, he's going to help me out better. So telling Claude, or any AI, what point of view you want them to come from, defining who they are, to Sandeep's point, it's just going to only amplify the type of response you get out of it.
Yep. So continuing on with that, let's say you are a senior financial analyst, draft a response to Mark Reynolds, who's the VP of Ops, right, about the headcount and the Q4 hiring recommendation. Here's a tone you have to follow, and here are the key points you need to cover in the summary that you have to give. Right? Once you do that, it skims through, it understands what it has to do, and it gives you a response. Right? Now, Claude has a way it gives two different responses. One is as a collaborative partner in the response format and the tone they want you to follow, and the other one would be firm but respectful. Right? As you can see, does that. Now, in the second place, we want to do something where we add more. Right? So you are a senior financial analyst. Here's the context from the meeting notes, or here's a report briefing that we have. Write the first draft and explain the executive budget memo that you have to give to the CFO and executive team. Here are the things that should be included within the memo when you do it, and give me the recommended next steps. Once you put that in, Claude would read through the file. Sure takes a while. It reads through the file, explains the memo, gives you the tone you need to follow whenever you do it, right? And as you can see on the right, you have the entire memo that you need to discuss either after or on call with whoever you are. The next step of the process is, again, somewhat similar, where you're asking Claude to draft something for you, but you're not giving the entire role yourself, but indirectly giving it, right? So you're saying, hey, draft it as this, include the purpose scope with responsible roles, base it on the reference draft. So again, role and context that you're giving to Claude. Does exactly that, gives you an SOP for review, and here's the budget variance that you have, here are the step-by-step rules you need to follow, who do you need to contact, what are the required outputs, right, and escalated triggers that could potentially come up. So now that we've covered summarizing and role and context, we'll go into something a bit more analytical, right? So whenever I write my code as an engineer, I always want someone to review it before I put up PR, right? So in short context, Claude can be a very skeptical reviewer of your work. Again, including the role and context idea, I'm going to follow up with this. You want to give Claude the exact task you have, act as a specific person, again, giving the role, and find the three weaknesses and explain why each of them are weak. You want to tell Claude, hey, I cannot analyze the entire document. This is a document I've prepared. Look through it, right? Self-audit it, and then tell me what are the reasons why it's weak, right? And then you can do something called a compare. Here's the initial draft I had. Here's the document I had, right? What changed between them? Was there some kind of revision? Did you fix anything? Why did you introduce new ones? And then what you can do to match the tone to the initial draft that you had was to rewrite the weakest section you identified and then comparing the two and matching it to the original one that you do. The reason we ask people to critique Claude is to self-audit it is because Claude will review its work before it gives it to you. So in the framework of writing a prompt, there are three things you need to remember. One, you need to give role. Second, you need to give context, which could be a data, something else, right? The third would be to critique its own work. So we're going to show you how Claude looks through the gap templates, self-audits it before giving it to you.
While Sandeep's bringing that up, another thing that sometimes I'll do if you work in multiple AI tools, right? You could get something out of Claude and you could ask GPT to review it and say that you got it from somewhere else or vice versa. They're good at kind of picking apart each other's homework, so to say. So don't just think of it just within internally, right? You can have AI models compare and analyze against each other too.
Yep, that's a great point. So in the way this works is that let's say you have a budget memo, right? And you're uploading the budget memo and you want Claude to act as a skeptical reviewer. You want it to find the three weakest sections and you want to explain why each one is weak, right? So it will look through it. It'll say, here are the recommended actions you need to follow. Here's what I think about it, right? And then eventually it will say, here's a common thread of all the memo, but here's some things you want to avoid. Now that we have the initial and the secondary draft that Claude gave, let's say you take that and you paste both the files and you say, here are two different versions of the exact memo. What changed between them? What revisions did you make? And why did you do it, right? So you have the initial draft and the draft that Claude gave right now. So we do that by uploading the initial one and the second one, which Claude gave. And you compare them two, right? So version B, again, it tells you what changes it made, right? What was the reason that version B is better? What is the reason for all of it? And what are the 4 things or 5 things it will call out to you that is very specific to the documents that are uploaded. Right after that, it'll tell you version B is strategically strong. Now, you would want Claude to explain why it happened, which is why you ask it to self-critique your work. So you take the weakest sections that you wanted to rewrite. So rewrite the weakest sections identified in the document, match the tone, and format it according to the original one, and explain why you changed and what. Right? So as you can see, it gives you a bunch of hiring recommendations, what were the reasons it changed, so on and so forth, what changed and why. The original gave no evidence. So as you can see, it clarifies or critiques its own work really well and is able to capture that and can make the changes as well. Right? So right now in the framework, we have a few things defined. Again, we have the role in the context, is good at summarizing, and self-critiquing is the next flow you need to follow. Right.
Yeah, I think as people are starting their AR journey, right, you kind of think of, hey, AI is going to give me an answer, right? It's kind of the first exposure to it, right? I ask it something to give me something back. I think this analyze, next step in your AI journey is really important and critical, right? Because now it's going to allow you to not just take that initial response, because what you'll find sometimes is as you massage the question and answer back and forth with it, it's as you get deeper into that conversation, the analyzing back and forth, that really things get locked in and where ultimately the result you're looking for.
Thank you.
And Jason, it also addresses the hallucination, right? I think because you are specifically asking it to critique its own kind of recommendation, right? So we talked about the VEP model, right? This is really the verify piece of it.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. So now that you have Claude thinking with role, context, and critiquing, you want Claude or you want someone that would think through the process yourself, right? You can have a back and forth conversation with Claude. And what happens is that when you give more and more context to Claude, this keeps it in terms of memory within the specific chat session that you're in. So each follow-up that you get to Claude holds more context. And it's been shown in research papers that came out recently that's called repetitive prompting. Repetitive prompting says, okay, well, I gave the first prompt, a second prompt, and third prompt, all 3 alike. The third prompt would most likely give you a better answer based on the context and thinking. So it does it with chains, right? So the more back and forth you go with Claude, the better the response becomes, right? So let's say you want to make a decision. You want to prepare for some kind of pushback. You want to generate the ideas. You don't have to do it alone, right? Claude can look as a sparring partner from both sides, and you can pressure test your logic and find out the things you missed initially, right? So let's say you wanna have a difficult conversation with someone, right? So I wanna tell a specific person a certain news. So draft my message, be empathetic but direct. They respond, ask the recipient, how do they react? What do you think would be the pushback? Now revise my message according to that to handle the pushback. So Claude pays both sides of the argument, right? It has both sides of the conversation as well. So we're gonna see that right after this. Let's say I want to brainstorm some of the ideas, and I'm going to use the same prompt template that I saw in the previous slide. I need 10 ideas in revenue growth in the Northeast region over the next 2 quarters, right? For each idea, give me a sentence why it would work and 1 risk to watch out for. Right, so here are 10 practical ideas, why it works, why it doesn't, right? As you can see over here, it shows you why it works, and then it assigns the risk over here for each of the 10 reasons or 10 ideas that you wanted to brainstorm with Claude. Okay, let's say you've done that, and you want to add a specific change that you want to make, right? This is the part where you have the brainstorming session with Claude. You say, hey, I'm recommending X reasons. I'm recommending X because of these reasons. Argue either against it, argue either for it, give me the strongest case for the opposite decision. Tell me what, right? Tell me what's the reason you would do it, etc. Cool. You do that. There you go. So you're proposing a hiring freeze. You're saying, okay, what is the strongest case against the hiring freeze? What do you think what the problem would be? It reasons out step by step why you shouldn't do that. And then the simplest argument in that case, what you should change in order for this to win. Now, of course, this is doing it on a single chat basis. And when you move on to projects and memories in context, better context, it's going to give you a better response. Now, this is the hard conversation you're going to have with the VP of Ops. Let's say you want to recommend a temporary pause on non-critical Q4 hiring because the operations is 12%. How do you think the Mark would push back? What do you think the points he would give? And how do you think you should revise that message to handle the pushback upfront? So it would revise your initial draft that you had, which you would send out to Mark and critique it. So it says, here's what I would send if I was you. Here's Mark's likely reaction that he's going to give, right? And then towards the very end, it would say, here are the points I would do to revise your initial message, handling the pushback up front, right? So it pretends or it understands Mark and gives an idea of what you should do before you give it out. So that comes down to 4 skills that we learned here, right? One is the data, one is the role and context, second is critiquing, third is brainstorming it with Claude. But all the 4
on the brainstorming, I was going to say one thing I've seen, heard some people do. I haven't played with it yet myself, but with these AI agents, you can also turn on the ability to talk to it, right? So we're not just typing in, you can interact and have a conversation with it. So I've heard some people using this brainstorming idea. You might be in a car on the way to a client, right? A new opportunity. And you might prompt the, Claude to Q&A sessions against this particular company you're going to work with, or information about their back, and you can have this conversation, ask it questions to help educate yourself on something that. So just another method in how you can use this brainstorming, right? Using it as a verbal interaction rather than typing. And hey, do it in your car. Yeah, you got some windshield time. Let's make it productive.
Cool. And along with that, good point, but along with that, we have 4 different skills that we learn now, right? And the way you want to do each prompting to optimize your token usage is to make sure you're combining all of them into a singular workflow that you're going to follow. Now, the main thing you need to give to Claude whenever you're thinking about it is giving a role, giving it data, generating the draft, and then asking Claude to critique its own work. This is the mindset you got to go with when you leave the session, of course. So the 4 step-by-step flow you want to give within a singular prompt is giving the role. You are something. I need you to create a deliverable for a specific audience. Here's what you need to know, right? Here's the meeting notes. Here are the emails that you have, right? The 3rd step would be generating the first draft. Okay, generate the first draft. This is what you need to do. And eventually critique your own work, act as a skeptical reviewer, find the 3 weaknesses, revise it to follow that. The way this works is you got to think about which step would be the most influential here, right? So you don't want to do this in chat because chat has limited amount of context or memory per se. The way we want to proceed with these is that we want to have it in Claude projects, right? Claude projects is a good way to save most of your best practices, your upload documents, everything you have. Claude already has your context. So you can skip mostly to the 3rd step and say, hey, generate this based on some of the prompts that you already have, right? And that's what we're going to do here in the upcoming session or in the upcoming slides. So, okay, as you can see, I say, hey, here is all the workflow that I have. Here's the prompt. Now we're going to go through the prompt a little bit. I'm uploading a specific business scenario. Use it to demonstrate the 4 reasons. Your task, again, we define the task, what it needs to do for a company called Cascade Diagnostics. You're giving it the role. You're giving it the data, right? And you're asking it to generate the following things. Once you're doing that, I want you to self-critique it. So before you give me the final version, critique your own draft as a skeptical CFO, identify the 3 biggest weaknesses, fix them, and provide only the improved version. Here are the final output requirements you need to give. And this is something I follow as best practice when I'm using Claude Code or anything for that purpose. It does that, builds the polished doc. This takes a while, so I'm going to skim through it really fast. Still loading. Cool. So it does that, and then eventually, when it gives out a response, here's the final budget risk memo for Cascade Diagnostics. Here's what happened under the hood following. So it tells you what it did. It tells you the weaknesses it identified in its initial first draft, and it gives you the response. So as you can see now that the memo is fully structured, it needs to be scanned quickly from top to down, and it covers all the topics you were asking for, it has all the deliverables that's needed. So you do that in a singular prompt and you get the most optimized the token usage, and you could use Claude, Opus, or Sonnet, whatever you prefer, even further. Cool. Now, we've been talking about all the 4 different sections that we had, but now to combine all of them, we use something called a project. The way we use project is basically telling Claude, here is all the context I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. Your job is to understand what the project would look like in a safe space and take the custom instructions I give you, along with the reference docs, which would be files you upload to Claude, and some saved prompts, right? Let's say, oh, use the save prompt on generating an email that you have in your workspace, go through the docs and give me the response, right? So we do that all together at once, right? And we're going to show that for this. So a singular project has many chats, right? You can start a single chat within a project every time you switch a task, right? The project's documents and instructions carries over, but the chat stays focused, right? And the project's compounded value. Let's say you're initially starting with a beginner project and the 3rd month is dramatically better than the week 1 because Claude already has your real documents, your templates, your refined instructions that you give over time, and say, this email doesn't look too good. Let me just tone it down. Maybe this is how the client has changed over a period. You can do that. The way we do it, and I want to go a little slow for this one. The way we do it really is to go to the projects option on the left. You click on new project. Now you're giving 2 things here, a project name and what you're trying to achieve in your project. So this becomes a project description that you got to give. It's more of a one-time thing you want to do. Let's say I want to make a cascade diagnostic executive budget reviews, right? And you say, this is what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to create a dedicated Claude workforce or workspace for recurring budgetary work, right? Every single time I want to review my work, I want this project to come about and go through it. Here are the step-by-step instructions. So after you do that, you get to the screen where you're going to fill out 2 more things. One is the instructions. You're going to tell Claude, here are the custom instructions, and you're going to mostly include your role, your audience, and you're going to tell how the company voice usually is, and here are some must-follow steps, right? So you're my assistant to write the next wave. Our tone, which we follow, is usually warm and precise, right? Here are some reference docs, so uploading the files that Claude knows about. So for example, the SOP, the brand guidelines, the service descriptions, the templates. And then we also upload something called saved prompts. These keep the prompts that we utilize the most. For example, drafting or summarizing or critiquing inside the project, so any team member or yourself can use it. And we scope it out for one project, one type of work, right? So let's say SOP drafting or compliance reviews, right? And the narrower the project, the better it is. So as you can see, we will go to the instruction sections first and fill out the instruction. Right. And it could look something like this, where you say, hey, you're an AI assistant supporting recurring this. Your role, as you can see, you are this, and this is your role. This is your primary audience. These are a different type of work that you support, right? This is the writing style you need to follow. Here are the rules. Rules are important because you're indirectly following compliance that you have to take permission before uploading anything on Claude. And these are the things you want to make. Use the VEP model. Here's a governance reminder of things you need to follow when you give Claude or when you prompt, right? Do that, and then you upload all the necessary documents. That is essential. So you upload a bunch of meeting notes, a bunch of libraries, a bunch of budget variants. You put a bunch of email threads, right? This gives Claude better understanding of what is going around, and you have a library of saved prompts. So you can say, hey, use the saved prompt, and what I need you to do after is use it to draft a memory of it, or use it to draft. So it says, use the project instructions, all uploaded files. First, find the prompt that looks like this, and then within that, use the prompts within there and the files that are present to draft a final answer that I could present before as a executive ready budget review, right? It does that. Right, there we go. So it gives you the output and says, okay, here is all the things. So as you can see in the prompt that you gave within a project is different from a chat. In a chat, you're defining everything. In a project, everything's free to find. You're just utilizing the ones that are predefined there. Yep, walks you through all of it, the decisions needed for leaderships, open validation items. Here are some recommended next steps. Here's the hiring recommendation that I want to give you for. Right. So that's Claude projects and how you mostly optimize Claude projects. The last thing I want to talk about is memory, right? Memory.
Let me just, one thing I'll inject there, kind of an extension of projects. I don't think we're going to dig deep in it on this call today just for sake of time, but, a skill being, kind of an extension of that, where you can build out that brand identity. So when I started playing with Claude, just, interacting with it, thought I had good prompts, got good information back, all was well. When I went in and developed a skill that actually kind of defined, hey, look at this through the lens of, in our sake, Tech River, right? Our kind of our brand guidelines and who we are as a company and how we approach things. It'll start taking that perspective as it's generating the responses for you. So as an organization, probably one of the first things I'd suggest is along with projects, getting some skills defined so it kind of knows who you are. Again, kind of like a prompt within a prompt. It's just telling you, again, how we want you to approach it, and make sure you keep these as kind of your base core values as you're generating replies to us and giving us output.
Yep, that's accurate. Thank you for that. Right after that, I want to talk about the last thing, which is memory. And this is something I want all of you to practice. And this is what we ask the industry standard to do. The way memory works is that we teach Claude by default how the conversation works. So by default, Claude will forget every conversation where it ends. Memories and files allows you to fix that, right? So the way memory works is that memory stores facts about you, like your role, your company, your team, your writing style, etc. And you can automatically show it up in the further conversations. And files would remember your work, right? Files are like documents you upload with the project, right? Like we did, the SOP, template, reports, anything that Claude can read at every chat, right? And what you need to teach within memory is the role and how everything should be reviewed every few weeks, right? And you want to make sure that you can control the memory, you can edit the memory in Claude settings, which would be the instructions that we walk through right now. So as you can see, we go into the previous project that we had. Right after doing that, we add another singular file, which will be a single prompt. And this says how I work. And this is what we ask people to do when they use Claude projects. This is a step-by-step instruction about my work, what I do, how I want my outputs written, right? This is just an additional layering of guardrails over the project and same prompt templates that you have that you can use at any point and call it out in the chat. You should follow the VEP model. What do you do when drafting emails? What do you do when drafting executive materials, right? This is how I want it to be written. What are the governance and how do you use this file? So whenever I call it, hey, Claude, you should probably look through memory and understand how I type. Based on that, solve this problem or draft an email or do specific things, get the budget executive summary. So you can type into Claude and say, use the file that I have this as reference for how I work and the rules you should follow. Also use the project instructions. I want you to create a budget review using the uploaded financial documents that you have, right? All of the ones you have, use the VEP model. Before finalizing, here are the outputs you should include. Claude works through that. Takes a long time to refer all the documents. And then once it gets it, it says, here are the executive budgets. I used all the workflows that you have. This is exactly what we defined in the files, and it allows you to draft the follow-up to a specific person. There you go. So with using memory, it gets better and better over time as you keep adding more files and context. Right, so that ends all the 5 skills, projects, and memories, and all you need to know about it. Now, we want to start with something called the human AI partnership. And this is fairly simple and something we want you to understand before you go for the next sessions. Here are certain things that AI handles really well, right? Let's say we discussed throughout the conversation that you can process about 1,000 documents in a minute. You can talk about generating 10 options for a vendor response. You can talk about summarizing certain things, right? But what AI can't do is understanding why this document matters, right? Choosing the right tone, understanding, oh, well, that is not quite right because you don't have the context to understand it, right? Understanding why a non-conformance happened, right? Making a judgment call. So this is where you and AI collaborate together and get a better workflow. You're not being replaced, rather you're optimizing yourself to use this platform. And well, there are plenty of things
And I
you can
think too,
do when,
just one comment on that last, the last slide you have there, so that right column, right, is, people talk about, oh, can you go back one? Sorry. What do you do better than AI? There's all this buzz about, hey, AI is going to take everybody's jobs, and what's going to happen. The right column here, this is where job security lives, right? Knowing which document matters for which client. Reading the room, the quiet moment, right? Being able to do that, making a call to keep people safe. That's judgment that we have built over years of real experience. AI doesn't have that. They'll never have experience. It has context, right? So just keep that in mind, that as the human, you've got something that AI never will have, that experience of what you've gone through in life.
Yep, that's pretty true. What you can do with AI saves your time. You can be more proactive with outreach. Let's say you're in client facing or in sales, right? You can have more time on site. You can have QBR prep. What you can do strategically is you can deep dive into different planning sessions for the next 12 months and say, hey, automate these emails for me. I'm going to go do the thinking. And professional growth, you can learn the next AI skill before your client asks you, so you can go out there and upskill yourself while AI does some of your more repetitive tasks. Okay, Solesh, do you want to take over, or does anyone want to take over? Or I can do this.
Yeah, so one of the things we were talking about was second. This is really knowledge check questions, right? So Jason, do you want to do it? Let's just go to the next one. So this is just really a quick check on the audience, right? So so let's just go to the next one.
Okay.
Here we go. So now you all saw, right? Like, throughout last 50 minutes, what AI is capable of, how to actually best utilize it, the human in the loop, the VEP model. Hopefully you all got a lot of value out of this webinar. But we just wanted to ask a few questions, and to you guys, and just raise your hand or just type your answer. Okay, so let's just go to the first one. So go to the next one. Here we go. A large learning model predicts responses by. The first one is looking up your answers in the real database. B, recognizing patterns, connecting. C, connecting to internet. D, B, recognizing patterns.
That is accurate.
Corey, that was Corey. Is there anyone else? There we go. Super good. So
I was a lucky guess.
Perfect. That's awesome, everyone. Let's go to the next one. Quick. You asked Claude to summarize a confidential client proposal. The biggest risk is what? Claude will summarize incorrectly. Claude will share it with competitors. Data may be processed by Anthropic's cloud. Or the answer D, which is Claude will refuse to process it. What's the biggest risk from your perspective? C, there we go.
Drum roll, please.
A. That's a possibility. That's a possibility.
I want to preface that A is a risk for sure, but it's not the biggest risk that we see.
Yes.
Right. Anthropic has its own data centers where they train it on. So you want to follow your governance policies that your company has. But A is also an answer, just not the main concern.
Yeah, so I want to just make a quick comment on data privacy and data security. The free versions of these AI tools can be fun, but nothing sensitive should be put into them ever. They are using that data to train their models. But even with the paid versions of OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, there is documented instances where organizations on enterprise plans where their data is supposed to be protected and segregated from training the model, that data has leaked out. And I've been saying this for a long time. it's not going to surprise anybody in 6 months when OpenAI comes out and says, whoops, we actually were using all that information to train our models. Sorry about that. It's moving so fast and it's so big that a data breach like that should not come as a surprise. And so you need to have some internal policies governing what employees are allowed to input into these models. And then as we get through, and I think it's maybe the third session or fourth session, we're going to talk a little bit about some tools and platforms that really help mitigate the risk by way of tokenizing sensitive data before it hits the learning the models. And so I just wanted to mention that because even if you're on a paid enterprise corporate plan, it doesn't just mean it's safe to upload anything into it. And so you want to be mindful of that as an individual and from an organizational level.
And Corey, as you said, we're going to spend a whole session on it and to walk you through how to best protect your data. So go to the next one, question 3. Which one of these is generative AI? A, Excel forecasting, B, Claude drafting email, C, EHR flagging, all of the above. B, Claude drafting email, that's good. B.
That is accurate.
Perfect. Let's go to the next one. That's good, everyone. Go to the next one. AI gives you confident text with one wrong fact. This is called what? Spot on, spot on, spot on. Awesome. Let's go to the last one. Human AI partnership says humans should focus on what? Tasks AI can do faster, reviewing AI outputs, strategy, judgment, learning to write better prompts. Strategy, judgment, relations, exactly. That is exactly, humans are really, really good at it. Alrighty, so those that you guys have done awesome. So here is some FAQs. I know we are running out of time, but we're going to share this content with you guys. So, you know, AI will take my job. History shows that that hasn't been the case, right? And AI is learning from us, so highly unlikely. It's going to get better at performing, or augmenting people's jobs. AI makes stuff, I can't trust it. That is right too. But if you train it really, really well, if you use the right prompts, if you use the VEP approach, it's faster and safer than working alone. So that's number 2. And the third thing we typically hear is, what about your data? And I think Corey spent a few minutes talking about that. So you heard, and we're going to spend a whole session on it.
Yeah, I think we've had, I know we're just at the top of the hour here. We had one question that came in, which Corey kind of touched on. I'll read aloud here. I'll kind of give a high level example, but I think, yeah, to his point, some of the tools we're going to highlight further down the road in the session here in sessions 3 and 4. I think we'll address this more, but Rob asked, what is your data and network security risk assessment and recommendation for using Claude's M65 365 connectors versus copilots? And also, what is the same risk assessment for using and saving confidential or proprietary information in a Claude project? I think just from the 10,000-foot view, right, without getting too granular, Rob, we could certainly, connect the offline more specifically, but both Claude and Microsoft Copilot can connect to your Microsoft 365 data, but neither is going to be fully risk-free. And I think ultimately the danger is less about the tools themselves, but more about the data governance gaps that lie underneath them, which we're going to again tackle in session 3 there. Probably the biggest risk as an organization is when you have employees using personal AI accounts for company work and not realizing that, hey, those personal accounts are going to have far less protection in place than a business plan, especially when you have it, structured from a data standpoint the right way. But businesses handling any kind of sensitive or regulated data, I mean, never put that into a free or standard AI plan. That's going to be your biggest exposure. You need to have a business or enterprise account with formal data, governance and agreements in place to really ensure, you're not putting yourself at risk. And really the safest rule of thumb is, treat anything you put into AI as potentially stored and reviewable, and keep that sensitive data out of there. Make sure we have controls and permissions in place. But again, not to spoil the ending, but the tool that Corey mentioned, I think, is going to directly address how you ensure that you're protecting your data in the best way possible. But anything else that the rest of you guys want to jump in there, just as far as the network and data risk, Claude versus Copilot, and just the overall security side.
Right. I would add a few points. So the question was initially, what's the data and network security risk assessment recommendation, right? You want to use Claude and with Microsoft versus Copilot, right? The risk more likely depends on the deployment permissions and any kind of training use that you have and the governance than the brand name, right? So Copilot is typically better aligned if the org already relies on maybe like a Microsoft native M365 security identity, whatever compliance track, right? A Claude project can be fine in the right enterprise setup, but storing confidential data, there still needs clear, approval, retention rates, access rules, etc. The biggest risk is actually the governance gaps and maybe overshared permissions or like users just uploading sensitive data without the policy controls in there.
The only other thing I will mention is, and I read this stats a few months back, where let's say if you're using Copilot and you share sensitive data, the stat was it remains in their memory for 6 minutes. Now, are they using it? Probably not. Well, is it there? Yes. And it goes back to what Jason shared, right? I think you have to make that decision, and we're going to share, as Corey said, there are some tools which can actually help you manage even that. So it's not even there for 6 minutes in their memory. So we'll share more about it in the session too. Any other question? Was there, Jason?
I didn't see anything else come up in the Q&A.
There's actually a couple questions here.
Coming in chat. Sorry, there you go.
Yeah, so Andrew Brown asked about recommending Google Workspace with Gemini Pro. So Sandeep, you can maybe answer that one. I'll answer the next question real quick here first. Aaron asked about custom building a CRM using Claude. And what I'll say, Aaron, is you likely can do this. I have built some pretty amazing things using Claude. The long-term viability of something like that's going to depend on your ability to maintain it, support it, and continually expand its functionality to meet the needs of the organization. Some organizations might have internal resources to help support that. A lot do not. And so, it's partly what we're here for, Ride the Next Wave team is here for. But yes, there's a lot of talk in the industry today about SaaS platforms, and Salesforce is the monster out there that lots use but few like. So could you custom build something specifically tailored to what you need? I think the short answer is yes, but Sandeep, if you want to talk about Gemini and Workspace a little bit, just full disclosure, we're a Microsoft partner. We don't do a lot in the Google space, so I know Sandeep has some exposure to it, so I'll let him speak.
Right. So yeah, the memory context can be shared if it only contains generic information and no sensitive internal doc space. For Google Workspace, Gemini Pro is like a reasonable choice. If the org is already standardized on Google, but the same rules apply, just evaluate the security or the retention and permissions you have and before using it with sensitive data. That's what I'd say. But yes, it can be shared. That's the short answer.
Sandeep, we've also just so everybody's aware, the video recording will be shared after the meeting along with the slide deck. And Sandeep, we've had some requests for you to share your memory text configuration file.
Yeah, I could share that. We can share that across to you guys.
Yeah, that would be great. Anybody else have any questions? Really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for joining. If you have any feedback, feel free to reach out to me or Jason offline. Would love to hear your thoughts on how we can improve things for next week's session. As we go through this, we will be getting more and more advanced with the usage of AI. This was admittedly a pretty basic session. So we hope you found it useful, and we hope to see you next week. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Take care.